The massive crystal spires of the Velethran capital stretched toward 3 purple suns, casting rainbow shadows across the landing platform where Ambassador Tom Chen stepped off the human transport ship. The air felt thick and warm, carrying scents of alien flowers that reminded him of cinnamon and metal. This was his first time on Velethra Prime, but Tom had spent 2 years studying everything he could about this warrior civilization. Tom wore his best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with silver trim that the Velethrans would recognize as colors of respect. His aide, Maria Santos, walked beside him carrying a case of ceremonial gifts. They had come here for one purpose, to prevent a war between Earth and the Velethran Empire. "Remember," Tom said quietly as they approached the welcoming committee, "never turn your back on a Velethran noble. Always maintain eye contact when speaking. And whatever happens during the ceremony, stay calm." The Velethrans waiting for them stood nearly 8 feet tall, with purple-tinted skin and elaborate armor that looked both beautiful and deadly. Their leader wore a crown of twisted metal that caught the light like liquid fire. "Ambassador Chen of Earth," the tall figure announced in accented but clear English. "I am General Corax, advisor to Emperor Theron. Welcome to Velethra Prime." Tom stepped forward and placed his right hand over his heart, then extended it palm up toward Corax. This was the traditional Velethran greeting that showed respect without showing weakness. "General Corax, I am honored to stand on your world. I bring greetings from Earth and hopes for lasting peace between our peoples." Corax seemed pleased by Tom's proper greeting. "The Emperor waits in the Grand Hall. The ceremony will begin soon. But first, you must understand something important about our ways." As they walked through corridors lined with tapestries showing Velethran victories in battle, Corax explained the situation. 3 months ago, we discovered that Princess Zara's intended marriage to Prince Vex of the Northern Houses was arranged through lies and betrayal. Prince Vex sought only to gain access to our military secrets through marriage bonds. When this treachery was revealed, the marriage contract was dissolved. Tom listened carefully. He had read about Velethran marriage politics in his studies, but hearing it explained by a Velethran made the situation more real. "And this affects our negotiations how?" "Princess Zara was the strongest supporter of peace with your people," Corax said, his voice growing troubled. "She spent time on your colonies, learned your languages, understood your ways. Without her voice in the council, the war faction grows stronger every day." They entered the Grand Hall, a vast space with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. Hundreds of Velethran nobles filled the room, their armor creating a symphony of soft metallic sounds as they moved. At the far end, on a throne made from what looked like a single enormous crystal, sat Emperor Theron. Even seated, he was clearly massive, with scars across his purple skin that spoke of many battles. To the Emperor's right stood a figure that made Tom pause. Princess Zara was smaller than the other Velethrans, perhaps 7 feet tall, but she carried herself with unmistakable dignity. Her armor was silver and blue, similar to Tom's uniform colors, and her eyes were a striking shade of gold. When she looked at Tom, he saw intelligence and sadness there. "Ambassador Chen," Emperor Theron's voice boomed across the hall, "approach and be recognized." Tom walked the long path to the throne, aware that hundreds of alien eyes watched his every step. When he reached the proper distance, he performed the formal bow that showed respect for a ruler while maintaining his own dignity as Earth's representative. "Your Majesty," Tom said clearly, "I come seeking peace between our worlds. Humanity values the strength of the Velethran people and hopes we might find common ground." The Emperor nodded slowly. "We shall see, human. But first, witness our justice." He turned to look at his daughter. "Princess Zara, step forward." Zara moved gracefully to the center of the space between Tom and her father. The sadness in her golden eyes had been replaced by resigned acceptance. "Citizens of Velethra," the Emperor announced, "by our ancient laws, a royal child who fails to complete a proper marriage bond brings shame to the crown. Princess Zara's intended marriage was dissolved through no fault of her own, but law is law. She has 7 days to find a new marriage bond with someone of acceptable status, or she will be declared unclaimed and exiled from our world forever. Tom felt his heart sink. This was worse than he had expected. In his studies, he had learned that exiled Velethrans lost all rights and status. Zara would essentially become a slave, owned by whoever chose to claim her. And without Zara's support in the negotiations, the peace talks would almost certainly fail. However, the emperor continued, according to tradition, any noble who wishes to claim Princess Zara may do so now. Speak now or remain silent forever. The hall fell completely quiet. Tom could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He looked around at the Velethran nobles, but none of them moved. Clearly, Princess Zara's political situation made her too dangerous to claim. Tom's mind raced through everything he had learned about Velethran law. There was something he remembered, something about the right of honorable strangers to participate in royal ceremonies. It was an old law, probably not used in centuries, but it might still be valid. He thought about Zara's work promoting peace between their species. He thought about the millions of humans and Velethrans who would die if war broke out. And he thought about the look of resigned despair in Zara's golden eyes. Tom Chen had always been known for making bold decisions under pressure. As a young diplomat, he had prevented 3 different trade wars through creative thinking and calculated risks. Now, facing the biggest decision of his career, he felt that same calm certainty that told him what he had to do. I claim her, Tom said clearly, his voice carrying across the silent hall. Every head in the vast room turned to stare at him. Princess Zara's eyes widened in complete shock. Emperor Theron leaned forward on his crystal throne, his expression unreadable. You dare. Zara gasped, her voice filled with disbelief and growing anger. You dare call me your wife? Tom looked directly at her and smiled. It was not a cruel smile or a victorious smile, but something else entirely. It was the calm, confident smile of someone who knew exactly what he was doing and why. I claim Princess Zara of Velethra as my wife according to your ancient laws, Tom announced formally. I invoke the right of honorable strangers as recorded in the Codex of Emperor Theron I, written 300 years ago. As an ambassador representing a sovereign world, I have the status required to make this claim. General Korak stepped forward, his face showing surprise and something that might have been respect. The human knows our old laws, he said to the emperor. The right of honorable strangers is indeed valid. An ambassador does have the necessary status. Emperor Theron studied Tom for a long moment. Ambassador Chen, do you understand what you have just done? You have claimed my daughter as your wife before the entire Velethran nobility. This cannot be undone. I understand completely, Your Majesty, Tom replied, still smiling. And I accept all responsibilities that come with my claim. Zara stepped closer to Tom, her golden eyes blazing with fury. How dare you make such a decision without asking me? I am not some prize to be claimed by whoever speaks loudest. I do not know you, I do not trust you, and I certainly do not wish to be married to you. I understand your anger, Princess Zara, Tom said gently. But I also understand Velethran law. As my wife, you retain all your rights and royal status. As an exile, you would lose everything forever. I offer you protection and time to find a better solution. You offer me nothing but chains with a different design, Zara snapped. At least in exile, I would be free of political games. Tom's smile never wavered. Perhaps we should discuss this privately later. For now, the important thing is that you are safe and our negotiations can continue. Emperor Theron struck the crystal arm of his throne with his fist, creating a sound like a great bell. It is done. Princess Zara is claimed and married to Ambassador Chen according to our laws. Let no one challenge this bond for 1 full year, as tradition requires. As the Velethran nobles began talking among themselves in their musical language, Tom could see the wheels of politics already turning. Some looked pleased that the peace negotiations could continue. Others appeared angry that an outsider had claimed their princess. Maria Santos appeared at Tom's side, her expression carefully neutral despite the shock he knew she must be feeling. Ambassador, she said quietly, the Emperor has invited you and the princess to join him for the formal feast tonight. Thank you, Maria, Tom replied. He looked at Zara, who was still staring at him with a mixture of anger and confusion. Princess, I hope you will join me tonight so we can begin to understand each other. I will attend because my duty requires it, Zara said coldly. But do not mistake my presence for acceptance of this situation. As the ceremony concluded and people began leaving the hall, Tom realized that the easy part was over. He had prevented Zara's exile and kept the peace talks alive, but now he had to convince a furious Velathran princess that he had acted in her best interests. Looking at her proud stance and angry golden eyes, Tom knew that this would be the greatest diplomatic challenge of his career. But he also knew that sometimes the most important victories required the greatest risks. The smile never left his face as he prepared for the battle ahead. The feast hall buzzed with conversation as hundreds of Velathran nobles enjoyed their evening meal. Tom sat at the high table beside Princess Zara, both of them picking at plates of food that looked like purple fruits and silver vegetables. The silence between them felt as heavy as the ornate crown on Emperor Theron's head. Zara had spoken exactly 3 words to Tom since the ceremony, pass the water. Even those words had been delivered with ice-cold politeness that made the room's temperature seem warm by comparison. Tom understood her anger, but he also knew they needed to talk privately soon. The peace negotiations were scheduled to begin in 2 days, and he needed Zara's support to make them succeed. More importantly, he needed her to understand that he had no intention of treating her like property. When Emperor Theron stood to make a speech about the strength of political alliances, Tom leaned close to Zara and whispered, Princess, we need to speak alone after the feast. There are things about Velathran law that you need to know. Zara turned to look at him, her golden eyes flashing with controlled fury. There is nothing you could tell me about my own people's laws that I do not already know, human. Perhaps, Tom said quietly. But I spent 2 years studying the complete legal codex, including sections that most modern Velathrans have forgotten. Trust me, this conversation is important for both of us. Something in his tone must have reached her, because Zara's expression shifted from pure anger to curious suspicion. Very well, she said. After the feast, we will talk. But choose your words carefully, Ambassador. My patience with you is already wearing thin. 2 hours later, Tom stood in Zara's private chambers, a spacious room with walls made of polished stone that reflected the light from floating crystal lamps. Zara had dismissed her servants and stood facing Tom with her arms crossed, still wearing her ceremonial armor. Speak, she commanded. Explain to me why you thought you had the right to claim me like some prize in your human games. Tom took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine everything. Princess Zara, what do you know about the difference between a claimed royal and an exiled royal under traditional Velathran law? I know that both situations are better than being married to a stranger who made decisions about my life without asking, Zara snapped. At least an exile is free to make her own choices. Actually, no, Tom said gently. An exiled royal loses all rights under Velathran law. You would become property of whoever chose to claim you, with no legal protections at all. You would have no voice in politics, no right to refuse orders, no way to return to royal status ever again. Zara's expression began to change. That is not true. Exiles can earn their way back to respectability through service. Tom shook his head sadly. I spent months studying every case of royal exile in Velathran history. Not one exile has ever regained royal status. Most become servants or worse. A few manage to earn basic citizen rights after decades of service, but none ever return to positions of real power. The anger in Zara's eyes was slowly being replaced by uncertainty. You are lying to manipulate me. I am not, Tom said firmly. But there is something else you need to know. A claimed royal retains all her rights and status. She cannot be forced to do anything against her will. The claiming is meant to be protection, not ownership. Zara stared at him for a long moment. If that is true, then why are you telling me? Most humans would use such knowledge to their advantage. Tom smiled, the same calm smile he had shown in the throne room. Because I am not most humans, Princess Zara. And because I need your help to prevent a war that will kill millions of people on both our worlds. My help? Zara's voice carried disbelief. You claimed me as your wife, and now you want my help. I claimed you to save your life and keep you in a position where you could continue supporting peace between our peoples, Tom explained. You are the only Velathran leader who truly understands human culture. Without your voice in the negotiations, the war faction will push for immediate attack on human colonies. Zara walked to the large window that looked out over the capital city. The 3 moons of Velathra cast strange shadows across her face as she considered his words. Even if I believe your motives were pure, she said slowly, the situation remains unchanged. I am trapped in a marriage I did not choose with a man I do not know. How is this better than exile? Tom pulled out a small device from his pocket, a data pad containing his research files. Because I found something else in the old laws, something that might give you a way out. Zara turned back to face him, her golden eyes showing the first spark of hope he had seen all day. What do you mean? There is an ancient provision called the 3 trials of leadership, Tom explained, calling up the relevant text on his data pad. If a claimed royal can prove her worth through these trials, she can petition to have her marriage dissolved and her full independence restored. I have never heard of such a thing, Zara said, but she moved closer to look at the screen. It is buried deep in the oldest sections of the legal code, Tom said, handing her the device. The trials test wisdom, courage, and leadership ability. They must be witnessed by the person who made the claim, but if the royal succeeds in all 3, she regains complete freedom and cannot be claimed again without her consent. Zara read through the ancient text, her expression growing more amazed with each line. This law is over 400 years old. It has not been used since the time of the Old Empire. But it is still valid, Tom pointed out. Velathran law states that old provisions remain in effect until formally repealed, and this one never was. Zara continued reading, then looked up at Tom with a completely different expression. The anger was gone, replaced by careful evaluation. Why would you show me this? If I succeed in these trials, you lose all claim to me. You gain nothing. I gain the chance to negotiate a real peace treaty with someone I respect as an equal, Tom replied. And you gain your freedom. That seems like a fair trade to me. But the trials are dangerous, Zara said, reading further into the text. The second trial requires single combat with a chosen champion. The third involves making a decision that could affect the entire empire. Many who attempted these trials in the past failed and lost everything. Tom nodded seriously. I understand the risks. But Princess Zara, I have seen your work promoting peace between our species. I have read your papers on interstellar diplomacy and cultural exchange. You are one of the most capable leaders I have ever encountered, human or Velathran. If anyone can succeed at these trials, it is you. Zara set down the data pad and studied Tom's face carefully. You really mean that, do not you? You actually believe I can succeed? I do not just believe it, Tom said confidently. I am counting on it. Because if you regain your independence through these trials, you will be in a stronger position than ever to argue for peace. You will have proven your worth beyond any doubt. And if I fail? Then we will face that situation when it happens, Tom said. But I would rather help you try for freedom than leave you trapped in a marriage neither of us wanted. For the first time since the ceremony, Zara smiled. It was a small smile, but it transformed her entire face. You are either very clever or very foolish, Ambassador Chen. I have not decided which. In my experience, the two often go together, Tom replied, returning her smile. Zara walked back to the window, but this time her posture was thoughtful rather than angry. These trials would need to be announced publicly and approved by the Emperor. The entire court would watch to see if I succeed or fail. Are you concerned about public failure? Tom asked. Zara laughed, a sound like silver bells. Ambassador Chen, I am a Velathran princess who has spent the last 3 years arguing that we should make peace with a species most of my people see as weak. I stopped worrying about public embarrassment long ago. Tom felt a surge of respect for this remarkable woman. So you will attempt the trials? I will consider it, Zara said. But first, I want to understand something else. You say you studied our laws for 2 years. Why? Most human diplomats spend a few weeks learning basic customs and consider themselves prepared. Tom joined her at the window, looking out at the alien city below. Because I believe that real understanding requires real effort. You cannot negotiate successfully with people you do not respect, and you cannot respect what you do not understand. Most humans see us as barbaric warriors, Zara observed. Most humans are wrong, Tom replied simply. Your people have a complex civilization with deep traditions of honor and justice. Yes, you solve some problems through combat that humans might solve through discussion, but that does not make you barbaric. It makes you different. Zara looked at him with surprise. You truly see us as equals. I see you as people with your own valid ways of thinking and living, Tom said. Different from humans, but not better or worse. Just different. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, both looking out at the moonlit city. Finally, Zara spoke again. If I attempt these trials, I will need someone to help me prepare. The laws require that my claimer serve as advisor and witness. I would be honored to help in any way I can, Tom said. Then we have an agreement, Ambassador Chen, Zara said, extending her hand in the human fashion rather than the Velathran gesture. You will help me regain my freedom, and I will help you negotiate a peace treaty. Tom shook her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. Call me Tom, Princess. If we are going to work together, we might as well be friends. Very well, Tom, Zara said, and her smile was warm now, genuine. And you may call me Zara. After all, we are technically married. They both laughed at that, and Tom realized that this strange diplomatic crisis might actually lead to something better than he had originally hoped. Not just a peace treaty, but real understanding between two very different peoples. The trials would be challenging, but for the first time since landing on Velathra Prime, Tom felt truly optimistic about the future. 3 weeks had passed since Zara announced her intention to attempt the 3 trials of leadership. The palace buzzed with activity as nobles from across the Velathran Empire gathered to witness an event that had not occurred for over 4 centuries. Tom stood on the balcony of his guest quarters, watching ships arrive from distant star systems, each carrying representatives eager to see whether Princess Zara would succeed or fail. The first trial, the test of wisdom, had taken place 5 days earlier. Zara had been required to solve a complex legal dispute involving 3 different noble houses, each claiming rights to the same mining territory. She had surprised everyone by proposing a solution that gave each house different types of access to the resources, creating a partnership that benefited all parties. The ancient judges had declared her successful after only 2 hours of deliberation. The second trial, the test of courage, had been more challenging. Velathran tradition required single combat, but the old laws allowed the challenger to choose the nature of the combat. Instead of selecting a physical fight, Zara had chosen a battle of strategy, challenging the court's greatest military mind to a complex war game simulation. For 6 hours, she had outmaneuvered General Korax himself, proving that courage could take many forms. Even the war faction had been forced to acknowledge her victory. Now came the final trial, the test of leadership, and Tom knew this would be the most difficult of all. Unlike the previous tests, this one had no clear rules or objectives. The ancient text simply stated that the candidate must demonstrate the wisdom to choose leaders and allies who would strengthen the empire. Are you ready for this? Tom asked as Zara joined him on the balcony. She wore ceremonial armor polished to mirror brightness, and her golden eyes showed determination mixed with nervousness. As ready as anyone can be for a test that no one fully understands, Zara replied. The historical records show that more candidates failed the 3rd trial than the first 2 combined. Tom nodded thoughtfully. Over the past weeks, he and Zara had become genuine friends. Working together to prepare for the trials had shown him her intelligence, her dedication to her people, and her surprising sense of humor. He had also seen her doubts and fears, the pressure she felt to prove herself worthy of leadership. "Whatever happens today, you have already proven yourself to me and to many others," Tom said sincerely. "You have shown wisdom and courage that would impress leaders on any world." Zara smiled at him, the warm expression that had replaced her initial anger. "Thank you, Tom. Your friendship has meant more to me than I can express. Whatever the outcome of today's trial, I am grateful that you gave me this chance." A chime sounded from within the palace, signaling that the ceremony was about to begin. Tom and Zara made their way to the great assembly hall, an even larger space than the throne room where they had first met. Every seat was filled with nobles, and viewing screens had been set up so that citizens throughout the empire could witness the proceedings. Emperor Theron sat on a throne made from crystallized wood, flanked by the three ancient judges who oversaw trials of this importance. Their purple robes were covered with symbols representing centuries of legal precedent, and their faces showed the gravity of the moment. Princess Zara, the center judge, announced in a voice that carried throughout the vast hall, "You have successfully completed the first two trials. You have shown wisdom in resolving disputes and courage in facing challenges. Now comes the final test." Zara stepped forward to stand in the center of the hall, visible to all the assembled witnesses. Tom took his place in the special seating area reserved for official observers, his heart beating faster despite his outward calm. "The test of leadership requires you to demonstrate the most important quality of any ruler, the wisdom to choose those who will help you guide your people," the judge continued. "You must select someone who will serve as your primary advisor and political partner when you inherit leadership responsibilities. This choice will be binding and cannot be changed." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. This was not what they had expected based on the historical records. Most accounts of the third trial had focused on military or economic decisions, not political marriages or alliances. However, the judge added, "There are conditions. Your chosen partner must be someone of suitable status who can strengthen the empire. They must be approved by this assembly. And most importantly, this choice represents your understanding of what leadership truly means." Murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd. Tom could see representatives from various noble houses sitting forward in their seats, clearly hoping to be chosen. Such a selection would bring enormous political power to whichever family Zara picked. "Princess Zara," Emperor Theron spoke for the first time, "you have 1 hour to consider your choice. Choose wisely, for this decision will shape not only your future but the future of our empire." Zara bowed respectfully to her father and the judges, then turned to face the assembly. Tom could see the wheels turning in her mind as she considered the political implications of various choices. Every person she might select would send a different message about her intentions as a leader. "I do not require an hour," Zara announced clearly, her voice carrying throughout the silent hall. "I have already considered this choice carefully." The assembly leaned forward in anticipation. Tom felt his stomach tighten as he realized that whatever Zara said next would determine not only her future but possibly the entire course of human-Belethran relations. "Before I announce my choice," Zara continued, "I want to speak about what leadership means. For too long, our people have believed that strength comes from domination, that the best leaders are those who can force others to follow them. But I have learned something different." She turned to look directly at Tom as she spoke, and he saw something in her eyes that took his breath away. It was not romantic love, but something equally powerful, complete trust and respect. "True leadership comes from choosing partners who complement your strengths and help you overcome your weaknesses," Zara said, turning back to address the assembly. "The strongest alliances are built not on submission but on mutual respect between equals." General Korak stood up from his seat, clearly confused. "Princess Zara, are you saying you refuse to choose a political partner?" "No, General," Zara replied with a smile. "I am saying I choose to redefine what such a partnership means." She walked across the hall to stand directly in front of Tom. Ambassador Tom Chen of Earth, I choose you as my political partner and primary advisor. Gasps echoed throughout the assembly. Several nobles stood up in protest, while others looked stunned by this unprecedented choice. But Princess, one of the judges interrupted, Ambassador Chen is already your husband according to our law. This trial requires you to make a new choice. Zara's smile grew wider. With respect, Your Honor, I am making a completely new choice. I hereby formally dissolve the marriage bond that was created 3 weeks ago without my consent. The hall erupted in surprised conversation. Tom felt his own jaw drop as he realized what Zara was doing. She was using the trial itself to free herself from their unwanted marriage while simultaneously making a point about leadership. Silence. Emperor Theron commanded, and the hall immediately quieted. Explain yourself, daughter. Zara turned to face her father and the judges. The marriage bond was created through ancient law to protect me from exile. It served its purpose, and I am grateful for Ambassador Chen's intervention. But now I choose something entirely different. She looked back at Tom, extending her hand toward him. Ambassador Chen, I invite you to stand beside me not as my husband, but as my freely chosen ally. I propose a partnership between equals, representing cooperation between our two worlds. Tom stood slowly, his mind racing through the implications of what Zara was offering. This was completely unprecedented in Velathran culture, but it was also exactly the kind of bold leadership that both their peoples needed. Princess Zara, Tom said clearly, I accept your offer of partnership. Not as your superior or your subordinate, but as your equal and friend. The ancient judge in the center looked completely bewildered. This is highly irregular. The trial requires you to choose a traditional political alliance. The trial requires me to demonstrate leadership wisdom, Zara corrected respectfully. I believe the greatest wisdom is recognizing that the old ways are not always the best ways. Our empire will be strongest when we learn to build partnerships based on choice rather than obligation. Emperor Theron leaned forward on his throne, studying his daughter intently. You would dissolve your marriage to a powerful ally in order to create an untested form of cooperation. I would replace a bond created by law with a bond created by mutual respect, Zara replied. Ambassador Chen and I have worked together for 3 weeks preparing for these trials. We have learned to trust each other's judgment and appreciate each other's strengths. That is a stronger foundation for leadership than any legal requirement. Tom stepped forward to stand beside Zara, facing the assembly together. Your Majesty, if I may speak, Princess Zara has shown me that true strength comes from empowering others, not controlling them. The partnership she proposes would benefit both our worlds. The 3 judges conferred quietly among themselves for several minutes while the assembly waited in tense silence. Finally, the center judge stood to announce their decision. Princess Zara, your choice is unprecedented and challenges many of our traditional beliefs about leadership and alliance, the judge said solemnly. However, you have demonstrated wisdom in recognizing the value of freely chosen cooperation over forced obligation. You have shown courage in challenging old assumptions. And you have displayed leadership by proposing a new model for how our peoples might work together. The judge paused dramatically before continuing. We declare your 3rd trial successfully completed. You have earned the right to dissolve your marriage bond and reclaim your full independence. The assembly erupted in cheers and applause, though Tom could see that not everyone looked pleased with the outcome. The war faction clearly preferred the old ways, but even they could not argue with Zara's successful completion of the ancient trials. Emperor Theron stood from his throne, and the hall fell silent again. My daughter, you have proven yourself worthy of leadership in ways I did not expect. Your proposal for a new form of alliance between our peoples has merit. He looked directly at Tom. Ambassador Chen, the formal peace negotiations will begin tomorrow. Princess Zara will represent our empire as my equal partner in these discussions. 3 months later, Tom stood on the observation deck of the first joint human Velathran research station, watching ships from both civilizations work together to build something unprecedented. The peace treaty that he and Zara had negotiated had included provisions for shared technology development, cultural exchange programs, and joint exploration missions. Zara joined him at the viewing window, now wearing a new style of armor that combined Velathran tradition with practical modern design. As the first Velathran leader to embrace partnership over dominance, she had become a symbol of change throughout the Empire. The Council of Worlds approved your appointment as humanity's first interstellar ambassador, Zara informed him. Congratulations, Ambassador Chen. Tom smiled, the same confident smile he had shown in the throne room months earlier. I could not have done it without my partner. Our partnership has exceeded even my expectations, Zara agreed. We have shown both our peoples that strength comes from cooperation, not conquest. As they watched human and Velathran engineers working side by side to build the future, Tom reflected on how a moment of desperate diplomacy had led to something neither of them could have imagined. Sometimes the most important victories came not from defeating others, but from helping them discover new possibilities. The smile never left his face as he looked forward to the challenges ahead.